Guys, I just came back from my weekly yoga session and I feel totally relaxed right now. And this is it's not a pity, but I try to get my energy back because this is the week, guys. After 6 weeks of the English Wine Weeks on this podcast, finally, the official English Wine Weeks have started in England. You see so many things on social media. There's so much going on right now, tastings, tours, videos, whatever. So if you are interested in English wine, just have a look on social media, WineGB website. It's everywhere. And people talk about their products, people talk about the culture, about soils, about climate, about everything. And this episode will be the last for the next weeks or so because there is still some interviews in my head that I want to conduct. So this episode is to wrap up the English Wine Weeks with my favorite products. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of my most exciting products ever tasted right in front of me on the desk. I will show you 2 to 3 more just to give you an idea of what is going on. And I mean, there is over 900, almost 1,000 vineyards in England. There is hundreds of producers and I've visited, 30, 40 of them maybe. So this is just my personal view, but it's great wine, guys. It's not the average stuff. It's not expensive stuff. It's just well-made wine. It's good wine, honest people behind. And I mean, you will recognize some of the winemakers because they have been part of the interviews. And it's just to show you in person or in bottle, how do you say that? What is really going on and what great products are on the market. And guess what? It's not only sparkling wine. There's, I would say, 60% still wines. I want to show that this is also a thing in England. So have fun with the episode. Let's go. 167 English Wine Weeks. Last part. Welcome to the Pinot Pixel podcast episode number 167, the last English Wine Weeks episode for the next weeks or so. We will talk about climate, we will talk about soils, and we will talk about my favorite products. And just to wrap everything up and to give you an idea of what is going on in England. I mean, there has been winemaking for over 2,000 years. There has been a wine culture for over 2,000 years. England shaped one of the most exciting, one of the most well-known wine industries and wine regions in the world through trade, through storytelling, through also historic events that have been part of wine history, part of our lives maybe. And it's super exciting, guys. If you haven't had any contact with English wine, try to get a glass. Try to go there and just have a walk in the vineyards, visit some producers, and highly recommend it. It's just amazing, guys. And I mean, it's expensive. It's not super cheap. There is still affordable wines, but you should compare it to high quality wines in France, in Germany, in Italy, because I would say at least 15 euro, 20 euro, you have to count for a bottle. So if you're interested in the very cheap stuff, you will find this in England, but I guess it's not produced in England. Talking about terroir, talking about soils. Soil is a really interesting topic, and my eye-opener was a seminar I had at university when I was studying in international wine marketing with Alex Maltman. Alex Maltman is a guy, he's a geologist, and he works at the university in Wales. And he's a soil specialist, and he's also into wine. He loves wine, and he wrote a great book on vineyard soils and on, let's say, how the soil and minerality can influence the taste of wine. And we know so many stories in the wine industry where people say, this soil does this and that. You can taste, slate. You can taste flintstone. And I mean, Alex, in the end, showed this is bullshit. There is an influence of the soil on the vines, on the vineyards, and finally on the wine that results. But you cannot taste the stone, the soil itself, because, if you lick a stone, it's tasteless, you know? And some people say, no, 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 no. When it's raining, I can smell the stones. What you could smell is, I have a stone over here. What you could smell is, there is a very, very tiny, thin cover of microbiological, I don't know, bacteria and animals, whatever. It's a very thin layer. And what happens is when it's raining, they react. And then, so what you can smell is basically the layer. Stones, those pieces over here, are tasteless. They don't smell like anything. They don't taste like anything. And I mean, it's dead material in the end. But of course, you have those connections in your head, in your mind, when you think of, I don't know, a volcano. We have the sulfur smell. Yeah, sure, because there is sulfur, and sulfur has a smell. And I mean, it's still alive. But when we talk about limestone, when we talk about chalk, when we talk about schists, when we talk about clay, I don't know, you cannot taste the clay in the wine. But what you definitely can taste is the difference of two wines that have been cultivated the exact same way and made the same way in the cellar, but one was on clay and one was on limestone, because there's so much influence on the vines, on the vine growing, talking about pH levels, talking about acidity, and it's super scientific. And I don't want to talk about this today, but what I want to show is when people talk about England, especially English winemakers, they love to talk about chalk, because chalk is well known for the soil of the, I would say, most prestigious wine region in the world, Champagne. Because Champagne always talks about chalk. And there's other soils as well in Champagne, but chalk is the Champagne reason, one of the reasons for their marketing, for their price policy, for almost everything. It's part of every story. And William Smith started in the mid 18th century to talk about the chalk in Champagne and also in Touraine, in the basically in many French regions, and also that the same chalk is available in England. And there's a map. I will put the link in the show notes. This shows that there is. It looks like a U, like the letter U, of a chalk basement underneath our topsoils. And this chalk is available in England and in big parts of France. And of course, then it goes back because it's a U and then back to England. And there is many places where there is chalk available, sometimes just under the topsoil. Sometimes it is the topsoil, so like the white chalky powder. And sometimes there is, 5 to 10 meters of something else above the chalk. But we'd love to talk about chalk. The thing is, the winemakers I usually talk to and I like the wines from, they talk about soil, but in a different way. Their approach is to say, I know what my soil is, and I use this information to grow the best vines I can to get the highest quality of fruit from the vineyard into the cellar and make the best wines out of it. This is basically the quote that Sarah gave me from Lyme Bay, and this is the philosophy of Guillaume. This is the philosophy at Wharie Experience of Tommy Grimshaw at Langham. It's the same philosophy the guys at Sandridge, Barton have. It's in their mind, it's in their head, and it's a great approach. And many of the wineries I just mentioned, they are not sitting on chalk, or maybe there's 10 meters of limestone in between. And of course, they use it because they look on different clones when they say, okay, maybe the pH level is lower or higher, or on limestone, this Chardonnay clone works better. This is fine. But in the end, they don't talk about soil, just the soil. They talk about everything, like what we call the terroir, because the climate is also very interesting. But what I wanted to show you is, when we talk about chalk, this is a piece of chalk. It's white, and when I have it in my fingers, you can see that there is this white powder because it's chalk. And chalk is, sometimes they call it super chalk, because the interesting thing about chalk is it's like a very, very big sponge. And this has two advantages. One advantage is it's free draining. So when you have too much rain, you can get rid of the water. And in addition, it also is a great storage for water. 1 cubic meter can store 660 liters of water. Isn't that crazy? Meaning when you have very wet vintages, chalk is good. And when you have very dry vintages, it's also very good because there might be some water available from winter or from the year before. So this is why they call it super chalk. But then there is some limestone as well. And if you are, like I am, into geology, you might know that many of the terms we know from the ages, so Jurassic, Cambridge, I don't know, Oxford, all those time periods you had in the last, whatever, 500 million years, they are named after places in England because there is so much going on. There is Devon, there is Carbon, there is, I don't know, Jurassic, Triassic, Cambridge, everything. There is one specific region Sarah also mentioned in our podcast. It's the area around Lyme Regis. This is why it's called Lyme Bay Winery. And there you have huge cliffs of limestone. And in those limestones, you can find ammonites, belemnites, like 100,000s of fossils. The problem for me as a fossil hunter was they are so big, I wasn't able to bring them home. The only two pieces I brought home are those tiny little ones, and it's just to show you. It looks like that. It's small pieces. It looks a bit like schist, and basically it's, can you see that? Yeah. It's skins, it's shells from ammonites. And when you talk to winemakers, they not only talk about chalk, they talk about limestone, they talk about riverbeds, and they talk about clay and sandy soils and flintstones. And flintstones are a critical part of English winemaking. I mean, we know stories from flintstones, for example, from Puy-Fumé and the Sancerre region, where some people claim that you can smell the flintstones in the wine. Alex Montland, listening to that, it's like, no! But basically, I mean, some people think it might be the case that you can smell it. Flintstones, if you don't know that, I know flintstones, I don't know, I have known them for almost 40 years because my parents always took me to the Baltic Sea. And when you have a walk on the beach, usually you discover those tiny little stones, usually weirdly shaped. And in the inside, they are quite colorful, like this one. Sometimes blue, sometimes green. And on the outside, they look like marble. Yeah, this is a typical flintstone. And then you come to England and you see the vineyards. I've been to Hambledon. I've been to in Langham as well. The case. And then you have the topsoil, and usually it's a mixture of loam and clay and sand. And then every now and then there is a flintstone, but it's not the flintstone that you would imagine from, I don't know, the beach of the Baltic Sea or the Northern Sea. This is the godfather of flintstones. And if you don't believe me, I just show it, okay? Because this little tiny piece of flintstone I brought with me in 2023 because I guess nobody would ever believe it, okay? This is a flintstone from an English vineyard. Look at this. This is 18 kilos, 30 centimeters. This is a huge boy. And this was not the biggest one. It was just the one that I saw and picked up. There is hundreds of them. And I mean, there is advantages of those kind of stones and there's disadvantages. The advantages, they keep the sunny weather, the temperature longer. They reflect sunlight. They also account for some better drainage within the soil. But unfortunately, you can hurt yourself when you just fall while cutting or pruning or whatever. And when you work with machines, they are a huge threat. This is freaking dangerous. I mean, and there have been hundreds of those little hills where people working in the vineyard just collected the stones and threw it aside because they were just in the way. And I haven't had any wine that tasted like flintstone. It's just part of English viticulture and soils. And I just wanted to share with you that this is Big Boy Flintstone. Could be an interesting name for a movie about English winemaking. I will keep that in mind. Talking about climate, England is... Some people say that England has the climate from Champagne 30 years ago. And Obviously, they share the same soil every now and then. The thing is, England is warm and wet. And this is what Sarah also said. It's getting warmer and wetter. And this could be a bad thing. This could also be a good thing. Talking about bad things, depending on where your vineyard is located and how it's situated, if it's not protected against wind or so, you can get problems with wind, with rain, with in the end moist, and then of course with mildew, with generally diseases. So this is the bad thing about wetty weather. On the other hand, with the chalk, you might be able to store water if you have a very dry year. There were some dry years. Sarah mentioned 2020, where they had a Pinot that resulted in 13.5 alcohol. So you are able to make great wines, fuller-bodied wines in England as well, because climate change is happening. We didn't expect that, huh? Did we? In England as well. England is hit by the Gulf Stream in the south. This regulates the climate. So it's basically sometimes it's warmer, it's drier. And especially when you come to the Channel and you go to the northeast of London, Suffolk, Norfolk, for example, this is the warmest region of England because you have the Channel, it's well protected, there's no influence from the ocean, and they can grow fuller-bodied wines. And I mean, one of the best white wines are located over there. Wimbury won best white wine in the world in 2017 with their Bacchus, and it's a quite fuller-bodied wine actually, and it's still quite aromatic and fruity. So something I would rather expect from Germany, for example. So quite interesting area to grow vines and to make wine. And the good thing about the English climate is that they have a quite long and cool growing season. So the bud burst is maybe 1 or 2 weeks earlier, but in the end the harvest is 3 to 4 weeks later compared to Champagne, for example. So you have a longer growing season, so the acidity stays higher, the wines are still aromatic, or the grapes stay aromatic, and in the end you have good acidity levels, you have freshness, and you have still, I would say, low alcohol. So we talk about 10 to 12, maybe 13 alcohol. And this is amazing with a dry wine. And this is also the reason why it's well suited for making sparkling wines, because basically you end up with a base wine of 9.5% or so, and then you add up the second fermentation, resulting in a sparkling wine of great quality with 11.5% or so. So looking at the trend of people drinking less and better and low in alcohol, English sparkling wine is definitely on their map. And in addition to that, they also make great ciders, and ciders are usually sitting around 6 to 8 alcohol. So this could also be a huge discovery for you guys if you will go to England. Talking about varieties, I mean, of course, they saw Champagne. They thought, we have the same soil. Chalk might be a thing. There is marketing for Champagne, and they get, 40 to 100 euro per bottle. We should do the same. So they planted Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier. And, I mean, they make great sparkling wines out of those 3 traditional sparkling wine varieties. And in addition, there's other varieties that are quite interesting, especially for England. I mean, depending on who you talk to, there is some people saying, no, please go away with Bacchus. Bacchus, for example, is 8% of the total vineyard area. Cheval Blanc is 3%. It's 120 hectares or so. And some people say that's crap, and some people say it's super interesting. And we will talk about Cheval in a second. What I wanted to say is there's super interesting grape varieties, and some of the varieties we will have in tonight's wines are not even on the list. So each year there is this industry report of WineGB, highly recommended. I love this paper. They talk about the top 10 grape varieties, and there is no Solaris, there is no Madeleine Angevine, there is no Ortega on the list, there is no Phoenix on the list, there is Cheval Blanc, there is Bacchus, there's the Big Five, there is Rondo, Dornfelder, Reichensteiner. So it's sometimes, it sounds like the 70s of Germany plus Champagne. But there's a totally different quality maybe not compared with Champagne, but definitely compared to the wines that were produced in the 70s in Germany. And this is also something that England might struggle with every now and then, because people hear Reichensteiner, Dornfelder, Huxelrebe, Ortega, and people think, wasn't this the crappy stuff from the 70s or 80s in Germany? Or Müller-Thurgau? And what's basically happening is they try to build a reputation on Bacchus, on great still wines, out of the three classic varietals from Champagne, and maybe some weirdos, but in a different way, just to say, this is not the old German stuff, this is brand new. This is our specific style. And this is also the base of the things that I brought with me today. But before we start into my favorite wines, I wanted to show you some of the wines we talked about in the last weeks. During the interview with Sarah, we mentioned the sparkling wines from Lyme Bay, and it's not my personal taste, because I'm more like those oxidative styles in sparkling wines, especially in traditional method, of course. But I'm also a marketing guy, and the labels are just amazing. So look at this. This is the label of Lyme Bay Winery. And when this sits on the shelf, it reminds you just a bit, of Dom Perignon. And it also glows. This is the rosé one with a rosé gold label. It's well made. It looks really good, and it looks expensive as well, and it's very, very drinky. I really like that style. I guess I brought a case or so of those wines. So marketing wise and also product wise, really, really good and interesting product. The next one I wanted to show you is my most favorite wine, my most favorite sparkling wine so far from England. It's Pinot Meunier 2018 from Langham, a wine that was only made in 2018. Still working on Tommy to make this great wine again. Absolutely fantastic, 100% Meunier. I guess 2.5 years on lease. Let me check that. 2.5 years on lease. Fermented and aged in oak barrels. This was just, oxidative style. You have this slightly red fruit. It's well structured. The acidity is absolutely amazing. This wine was so balanced, ridiculous. And unfortunately, there is only a few bottles available on the market, not at Langham's anymore. The last one I spotted in public was on the menu of Noble Rod in Langham Culver. So it might be available. And if not, there is 4 bottles left in my cellar. And we will drink one every now and then, I guess. Another wine I wanted to show you is the wine that brought me to English wine, and that really grew my interest, that caught my attention. It's Gisborne Blanc de Blanc 2012. And this is a wine how I would have expected English sparkling wine to be. This is super lemony, fresh, crisp, very high. The acidity is crazy, but it is balanced, but you can feel it. And in a blinder, I would say Riesling Sekt, traditional method, Germany, high quality producer. But super well made. We had this on the at Pro Wine on the Wine GB stand, and some people knew the wine, the vintage. It's a great wine to share. Super fresh. It's not my personal anymore, but I have so many. I have a history of this bottle, and it will always have a special part in my heart. So yeah, and in my shelf as well. This can age, guys. Another wine I want to show you, and this is the last one before we start into the official round, because I like the idea, and it's also an idea that Tommy told me. There's a quite tiny winery. It's called Little Waddon. And Little Waddon, very, very lovely people over there. I visited them in 2022, and it was just amazing. They were super busy. I just came over and said, hi, do you have 30 minutes to talk? And I don't know, we had a connection or so, but we stayed there for 3.5 hours. we had cafe, and we just talked, and the wines were absolutely amazing. And I knew to that time that Tommy Grimshaw was involved. I knew that Daniel Ham from Offbeat Winery was involved in winemaking, because they are basically the growers. And they have so many great products. They have Colfondos, White Rosé Red, But my favorite one, besides the one we will taste in a second, is Little Waddon 3 Summers 2018. And basically, the idea was to bring a wine on a bottle into a bottle that has seen 3 summers. So the label says 2018, so it was harvested in 2018 and then fermented, then 3 years on lees, and finally bottled in 2021. And it's also Cévai Blanc. It's organically grown, and I still can remember the owner when we were talking about Phoenix. There's another grape variety, and he said, whoever tells you that Phoenix or Rondo are PVs is a liar. They are affected. I mean, it's not like super fastly growing when one plant is infected by mildew, for example, but they still get it. But usually it's more the leaves and less the fruit. So usually you can use the fruit. This is a stunning product, and I still can remember how it was. And I haven't tasted any of those bottles after I came back. So all the 6 bottles I brought with me, I stored. Looking forward to this one day. So, but now, enough of talking. We will dive into the world of my most favorite wines. And what I want to do is I would like to take you on a journey coming from the area, eastern of Cornwall, and then going along the bay direction Essex, and then ending up at my current most favorite product. I would drink it once a week if I could, but there's only a few bottles available. Nevertheless, we will end up with this. But I would like to start just quite close to London, Canterbury, because a producer I wasn't able to visit last year, but I visited in 2022, and I was super excited when I was there. It's called Westwell. Westwell sits in Canterbury, and basically their motto is Sun-Dirt Yeast. And you can buy t-shirts where this is on the shirts, printed on the shirts. They work in total respect with nature. They experiment a lot with amphoras, with dessert wines, with sparkling wines, pet nuts. I mean, wax capsules, skin contact, weird varieties. I mean, this is an Ortega, and super genius approach. They know how to do wine tourism, because, I mean, it's not a winery you can spot from the, National Road or so. It's really, you have to drive, 3 to 5 kilometers. Can't remember it in detail, but it was a long drive to the winery, and then you end up at the winery, and it's lovely people. It's beautiful to have a walk in the vineyards. Oh, they offer tastings, they offer guided tours, everything. And I was so excited when I saw this bottle. It's an Ortega made in amphora in vintage 2020. And I mean, I don't know if you can see this. It's quite hazy. There is still some solids in it. It grows on sandy soil. It's a vineyard that is well protected against wind, and basically this brings out the best fruit, very concentrated fruit, and also still a super fresh acidity. And it's a wine that surprised me for the first time, because when I opened it at home, I was disappointed. It was like quite closed in the nose, and I mean, there was structure, but not so much. And then I said, okay, let's give it some time, put it in a decanter, just a part of it, and put the rest in the fridge. And decanted it, and it got better. It was an okay-ish wine to that time. And one day later, I gave it another chance, and it was way better. But still, not what I would expect from a wine that was around 30 quid at that time. And then I forgot the bottle in the fridge for 4 weeks. 4 freaking weeks. And then one day I was like, oh, the Ortega, let's give it a try. And this was absolutely crazy. It was out of this world. It was just like dried flowers, dried tropical fruits, apricots, mango, lychee. It was just an explosion in the nose. On the palate, it was so structured. There were tannins, but not like annoying tannins. Just like everything was balanced. It was complex. The finish was just ridiculously long. A great wine. And I can't tell you what was with this bottle, but I was so happy that I kept it, that I forgot it in the fridge, because the next bottle I opened, I bought the last 6 at the winery, was just after decanting like that. And what I really like, and this always reminds me of the skin fermented whites I had from England, the Renegade Bacchus, the Bacchus from Guillaume Laguerre at Wharie Experience, and also this Ortega, those bunch of dried flowers. So when you have flowers on the table and they sit there for 4 to 5 days and then they dry, they don't rot, they dry, and then you have this like ripe flowers, dried flowers smell. It's absolutely amazing. And this was my favorite wine to that time. It is still sitting around 11.5 alcohol, so super light as well, but it has the power to work with food. This is a food pairing giant, guys. And I mean, they made another one in 2021, I guess. It's called Skin Fermented Ortega. And they were also the first winery, I will put the link in the show notes, that had skin fermented Ortega from the Amphora. So the first Amphora wine from England came from them, and it was the predecessor. I don't know what vintage this was. It wasn't on the website, but it had a screw cap. This one has a wax capsule and a cork. So this is 2020. Stunning wine, guys. So right now, we take a huge jump to the most western part of our trip, back direction Essex, and we start at Sandridge, Barton. Sandridge, Barton is a winery I always wanted to visit all the 3 years I have been to England, and last year I said to myself, it's still from where you are, 2 hours away, but who cares? Let's just go there. And we went there, and it was such a beautiful place. I mean, I've known Charlie and Duncan from tastings, Tom from Emerging Vines, maybe not in person, but through contact to emails, and they were just lovely people. And I mean, they are just lovely people. And I met them in person, and it was absolutely amazing. It was one day so impressive. I mean, the winery, the guys, the approach, the restaurant they have in place. And I didn't find the time to have a look at the they have like little cottages and tasting rooms and stuff like that. But just the wines, the restaurant, and the people. Charlie gave us a tour. Absolutely amazing. And I mean, you can pick, I guess, 5 to 7 wines you really love, because they have different styles. They have an absolute great sparkling wine. So Charlie's playing around a bit with oxidation as well. I really love that. But my favorite one was Tipley Hill. Not only because of the color. Look at the color. Look at the label. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that cool? It's Madeleine Angevin. And this is a variety only few people know. And the amount of vines in England is so small that it's never been on any list. Maybe there's, I don't know, 10 or 15 hectares also in England. But it's an absolutely fantastic wine. Just to give you a feeling, this is 12% alcohol, so still quite low, but it feels a bit full-bodied compared to other English wines. But guys, this is just stunning. It's 100% Madeleine Angevin. It's whole bunch pressed and spontaneously fermented in stainless steel, then matured in steel and big oak, I guess. Was it oak? Big oak? It was old French oak, okay, for 9 months, and then bottled without filtration. So quite low interventional approach, and the taste was so different to the wines I had so far. I mean, this was my first Madeleine Angevin, obviously, but absolutely stunning wine. It's structured, it's complex, it has elderflower, it was like lemons, like ripe pine, and a touch, just a gentle touch of oak, and also like a very soft tannin structure on the palate, maybe from the oak. We had this with, I guess, with grilled vegetables as an aperitivo. Crazy. Really, really good. And what I also liked about it, I mean, the story is a bit tough, especially through the eyes of a marketer, with Sharpham and Sandridge Barton. So Sharpham was the original place where people like Tommy or Sarah used to work, and Sandridge Barton is the new place. And today they keep the name of Sharpen because the idea of winemaking, the approach is still there. Duncan brought it to Sandridge Barton. So they kept the name, and this is from this Sharpen line. And the idea behind, but is something different. There's what is it? I mean, it's a campaign. Let's call it a campaign, and it's called "Don't Feed the Ponies." And "Don't Feed the Ponies" means that 25 cents of every single bottle sold are donated to the local preservation, what is it called? Dartmoor Preservation Association, to preserve the natural habitat over there. And I mean, this sounds like every normal, preservation story, but it's a bit different. Imagine you have an area like beautiful forests, and this is something that also surprised me when I was in England. They have forests you cannot imagine. I mean, when you go to a forest in Germany, you barely see oak trees. When you're in England, I had the feeling that 50% is oak. And this is not only beautiful, it's also amazing because it's huge trees. They're very old, and it's a totally different feeling when you have a walk in the forest. And in addition, they have wild horses. They're just running around. It's the same with the area called New Forest, where Guillaume is located, with the Wharie experience. There is wild horses, and they're just hopping around, having their, daily business going on. And there's tourists, and people still feed those horses. And the idea of this preservation association is to convince people of stopping feed the horses. Convincing of stop feeding the horses. Wow. Sorry, I'm German. But they don't want it. And I like the idea. It's super cool. And when you have wines like that, which are just amazingly produced, well made, and taste absolutely fantastic, you get some pounds together. Yes, so this is my favorite wine from Sandridge Barton. Right now, just a bit along the coast, we end up at Lyme Bay. And maybe this is not the way you would go by car, but I mean, for me personally, the next one is Lyme Bay. And we talked about Pinot a lot with Sarah, and surprise, the third still wine in the row. And this is Lyme Bay Pinot Noir. And this Pinot Noir is a single vineyard Pinot Noir from Martin's Lane. It's from 2020, and it has 12.5 alcohol. So still on the more elegant side. So this wasn't the plot that Sarah was talking about when they had the high alcohol level. But this is one of the Pinots that really surprised me. Think about Central Otago. So a fuller-bodied, powerful, fruity, but also structured, cool climate Pinot Noir. And it's so close. I mean, in a blinder, I would put it to Central Otago. It's really amazing. I mean, I'm a Pinot guy, and I don't like all Pinot styles. I'm more a fan of the more elegant versions, not the fruity, in-your-face, powerful 13 or 14 alcohol or so. But, I mean, it really depends on the bottle, on the winery, of course. This was absolutely amazing, especially for England. And I'm 100% sure that we will see so many products more in the future that will be like this, because they have amazing winemakers. This is 2020, so I know that Sarah has already been involved. Sarah, this is absolutely great product, and I still can remember the wine. It was just like concentrated cherry. You had the sense of oak. You had like forest floor. You had like wet leaves a bit. Some cedar wood. There is a sense of oak on the wine, but not super in your face, and spicy hints of vanilla. This was just a nose on, and the flavors on the palate were complex, and the acidity level is there. It's a bit higher in tannins, not super annoying, but also not super low as some people might expect that. Great product. And as you can see, it's on a screw cap. And guess what? Nobody cares. It's absolutely amazing. Lyme Bay, great producer, great product. If you are interested in the way it is made, I just put it from the website. It's a small batch fermentation with manual pigeage every 8 hours, then macerated for 10 days, and then put in 400 liters oak barrels to age for 10 months, and then unfined and unfiltered, put on the bottle. Great product, guys. What can I say? So, next winery, next vineyard, quite close to them is Little Waddon. The ones we already talked about. And my favorite wine at Little Waddon to this time, once again, it's a still wine. It's Little Waddon Willow White 2021. It was the first still wine I have ever tasted from England. Can you imagine? There's a guy who's super interested in English wine and English sparkling in the English wine industry, and he tries to get there for 2 to 3 years, and there's always problems going on, especially with COVID. But there are those nice guys like Charlie, like Tom, like Tommy, who just stay in contact and give you updates, and every now and then you taste a bottle of sparkling wine in Germany. And then this guy is able to make it to England. And the first winery he visits when he's there is Little Waddon, and they have still wines. And this wine, it was just like, I can't remember the situation. I sat on the terrace after we had a walk in the vineyards, and it was a very dry vintage. They had huge holes out of drought, produced by the drought in the vineyards. It was like, I don't know, it looked like the Grand Canyon, actually. And they were a bit concerned about the vintage 2022. And this was 2021, freshly bottled a couple of weeks ago. And I had it in the glass. I was sitting on the terrace. And I mean, I know you guys usually have in your mind when you talk about England, oh, it's raining all the time. No, it was freaking hot. It was 27 degrees. And we were sitting outside on the terrace. And we had a glass of Willow White. And it was amazing. I was like, seriously? This is the wines you make over here? Wow, I was just blown away. And I can't remember the amount of bottles I bought when I was there. I guess 80% is gone right now, but some I still keep, and one is the Willow White. And immediately when I'm talking about this wine, I want to have a glass of it. Single blend, separately fermented Phoenix and Cheval Blanc, partially hand destemmed and food crushed, left on the skins before a wide fermentation, unfiltered and unfined, no sulfur added, and then put on the bottle and straight away on the shelf. I had it in August 2022, so it basically was 10 months probably in total on the bottle, maybe 9 months. And it was just, imagine you have a bunch of elderflower punching in your face, then there is some citrus, there's some lemon. It was just, it just smelled super fresh and exciting, and like summer breeze, holiday terrace wine. On the palate, you have this structure, this fresh acidity, and that was carrying like riper fruits, like maybe peaches, also white peaches. You had a sense of caramel, and the finish was not super long, but long enough to just think you just like summer in the glass, guys. Summer in the glass. It's amazing, and I'm really looking forward to see them in November this year. Hopefully we can manage it. Last year they were too busy with the harvest because unfortunately I was there in October. Maybe not the best idea I had, but this year hopefully I can make it again over there. So yes, Little Waddon, great wine. And quite close from there was a winery I visited in 2022 as well, Dalwood Winery. And luckily, it was by accident because I was driving around and I got hungry and I was looking for a pub to eat something. And then I discovered that in this tiny little village, there's a vineyard on the map, on Google Maps. Let's have a look over there. So I drove to the winery, and there was a very, very kind lady and a super crazy dog, a lovely and lively dog. And she took us to the vineyards. She had a cooling bag with her, with, I don't know, 8 wines or 6 wines. I can't remember it. But we tasted the wines in the vineyard, and she was telling the story of Cheval Blanc. It was the first time I heard of that. No, it was the second time I heard of that variety because I just came from Little Waddon. And then she served us our sparkling wine. And people always say sparkling wine, great sparkling wines have to be made out of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Meunier. And this, guys, Dalwood Vineyard, this is a vintage 2019 traditional method English sparkling made with Cheval Blanc. There's some Pinot in it to give it some structure, but the Seyval is the fresh part. Maybe Seyval Blanc is not a good idea to make a still wine out of it because it's quite neutral, but it has the acidity, the freshness, and it also brings some structure every now and then. So if you want to have a great base wine and you manage to have high quality fruit in the vineyard, you bring it to the cellar, you make a great base wine, and then you make traditional method sparkling wine out of it. This is the result, guys. And unfortunately, this is my last bottle. But this wine is... We had it in the vineyard, and I had it twice at home because I only bought 3 bottles, unfortunately. But it was such a lovely place, so kind people again. And I mean, they served the wines in the vineyard. I paid them in the private kitchen after we had a short walk through their private garden. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for this hospitality as well. And yeah, it's can you imagine? Just imagine a lemon cheesecake. Okay, so you have this biscuit notes, like hints of the traditional method fermentation, like the slightly toasty, biscuity croissant aroma, and then citrus and lemon on top. So lemon cheesecake. Super fresh, just the notes. And then on the palate, you have this lively acidity that is pushing the wine. It's not crisp, but it's zesty, you know? You have the feeling that the lemon cheesecake you have in the nose ends up in a lemon peel. Yeah, it's just a fresh wine. So if you want a really fresh, crisp summer wine, again, but then this time sparkling, Dalwood, Seyval Blanc, Pinot. So Dalwood, the official name is Classic Brut. Dalwood Classic Brut. That case 2019. I guess right now it's 21 or so. If they still make it. One of the best Seyval Blanc sparklings I have tasted so far. And I mean, it's been only a few, but there's just a few impressions of this variety. And this is what Fergus always says, that it's quite tough to make a good wine out of Seyval Blanc. It's not the variety that he would prefer, but there are some great examples, and this is just one I discovered over the last years. So from Dalwood, it's not far to go to Langham Winery, Tommy Grimshaw. If you are interested in his approach to winemaking, just listen to the episode. He started the English Wine Weeks with the first interview. We recorded the interview in the vineyard, so it's definitely a must to watch the video out of that. My favorite wine that is still available, because unfortunately the Pinot Meunier I just mentioned is not available anymore, is the Culver. And basically they have 2 classic cuvées. One is called Corellian, the other one is called Culver. And I always struggled with which one is the one that is Chardonnay dominated, because one is there's a higher proportion of Chardonnay in it and lower amount of Pinot, and the other one it's Pinot dominated. And in the end, somebody told me Corellian is the longer name, Chardonnay is the longer variety name. So Corellian is the Chardonnay based, and Culver shorter is the Pinot Noir based. And guys, it's such a lovely wine. It has this oxidative notes, which I really like from sparkling wines, and picked in October 2020, gently pressed in whole bunches, press fractions carefully separated, and left to natural settle for 24 hours. Then primary fermentation with indigenous yeast in stainless steel and used oaks in combination, and then full malo. It's not quite usual, but sometimes it happens. Full malolactic fermentation, 7 months of élevage, and then the final blend from reserve wines from our 4,000 liters concrete tank, and then bottled and left on the lease for at least 14 months. The dosage level is very, very small. All the dosage levels at Langham are very, very small, very tiny, sitting around 2 grams usually, and this one is sitting at 2 grams. And then at least 3 months on cork, just to give it a little bit of bottle aging, resting, and then it's put on the market. And it's a stunning wine. It's rich, it's intense. You have stone fruits in the nose. You have those brioche caramel aromas in the nose. It's ripe apples. So the red fruit is coming through. Maybe some raspberries or so, slightly, raspberries, I would say. And on the palate, it's bubbly, it's fresh. The acidity is there, but it's so well integrated. It's not annoying at all. It's a soft acidity, but a high acidity. So it keeps just flooding your mouth with saliva. And you have then hints of green apple in the finish, maybe. And what I really like about this product is that the pelage, the bubbles, they are so creamy, so soft that like they are dancing on your tongue. And I know it sounds a bit awkward, but I mean, this is one of the best sparkling wine producers in England. And if you ever have the chance to taste a bottle, to buy a bottle, just do it. They have vineyard tours as well. If you are in the area, try that. And I don't know, I have an idea what their price is based on, but the prices are ridiculously crazy. They are too low, guys, still. This one sits around 32 quid, so maybe 35, 36 euro. And for this quality, for this taste, there's no standard champagne that can compete with that. This is the level of the good grower champagnes, and they usually sit around 40 to 50 euro. So, Langham, guys, price value, quality-wise, your sparkling wine producer. So this has been the second sparkling wine in the row, and we already had 4 still wines. So it's 1/3 sparkling and 2/3 still. And guess what? There's another still wine. And this is a guy that was recommended by Tommy Grimshaw when we first had contact in 2019 or 2020. The winery is called Charlie Herring. And it's a bit confusing because actually the guy who works there is Tim Phillips, and sometimes I call him Charlie, even though I know that his name is Tim, but sometimes it confuses me. Charlie Herring is an homage to a place, a story, and also his grandfather, and his approach to nature, to winemaking, just blew my mind. I mean, when I visited him for the first time, we were talking at least 1 hour about hazelnuts, about oak trees, about birds, and it was just amazing. This guy's respect for nature and the approach to everything he does, not only winemaking, we need more people like that. I really enjoyed the time. I guess it was 2.5 or 3 hours in the end. And I was lucky enough to taste his wines because they're barely available because they got quite successful. And I mean, it's just amazing wines. And the wines I've tasted, my most favorite one to that time was a Riesling. Yes, there is Riesling in England as well. And the Riesling is called Promised Land. This is the 2020, vintage 2020. And right now it's a still wine. And some years ago, it used to be a sparkling wine. A great impression of the Riesling, of everything he does. And this is low intervention, guys, but it's so well made. It's such a charming, a balanced, a great product that, I mean, it's just spectacular. Okay, you have the Riesling fruit, so you have green apples, you have pear, you have lime, it's a bit zesty. There is spices as well. What I really liked about that wine, when you drink it, when you have it on your palate, I mean, you can still feel the fruit. It's concentrated fruit, it's ripe fruit. But it's still on the same way, and at the same time, it's elegant, it's focused. It's just such a high quality wine, and what in the end, just you cannot top this, but there was a saltiness on the wine. The wine was slightly salty, and I said, okay, I'm in. I buy everything you have. And he said, no, well, unfortunately, there's only a few bottles available. You can have 1 or 2 if you want to. And in the end, I was lucky enough to get 1 bottle of this, and it's still in my cellar. And one day I will open it because this can age. It's sitting around 11 alcohol. Riesling Vin Naturel is on the label. Look at the label. It's designed by his daughter. Absolutely amazing. I love it. I really love it. So yeah, it was some people would call this a drug because you can get addicted from that. So yeah, what shall I say? Tim, I really hope to seeing you again this year. Maybe finding some time to see you and talk about, I don't know, winemaking, viticulture, hazelnuts, and maybe having a glass of Riesling or cider, because Tim also makes great cider. His cider is called Perfect Stranger, and if I remember it correctly, it's a mixture between wine and apple. Let me check. Artisan cider. I want to say something wrong, but this cider is amazing. I mean, just look at the color. Look at the color. And this, guys, is the perfect transition to the last drink of the night. And surprisingly, it's not a wine, it's a cider. Guillaume Laguerre is a great guy. I love him for what he does. He's a friend right now. He hosted me twice. Last time after London Wine Fair, and we had some cool, really cool days together working in the vineyard. And my favorite product at the moment is not a wine, it's a cider. And it's the cider I disgorged last year with him. I will open it at this just a second. And it's the cider I disgorged with him last year, and it's a great product, guys. Look at this. It's called The Cider. Or, as Guillaume, I really like when he says that, The Cider, because he has this slightly French accent. He's from Switzerland, and also his approach, stunning, guys, just stunning. And, I mean, I already knew what he's able to do in wine. He has produced a great Chardonnay and a fantastic Pinot Gris in 2020. The Pinot Noir was on point. There was a Bacchus, a normal one, just flowers in your face, and a skin fermented one, well structured, and just amazing wines. And then I discovered this guy knows how to make cider. And I mean, he talked about this in the episode. Listen to it. Part of the English Wine Weeks. And this, guys, is The Cider. And this cider is made like champagne. So this is traditional method sparkling cider. Look at the color. Look at this. This is just beautiful. And what he does is, and I had to look it up because I didn't want to say anything wrong, it's Dabinet, Chesil, and brown apples. So 3 different varieties. And they are harvested at the point where they're very, very ripe and concentrated fruit. They come from Somerset. Harvested at the peak of ripeness is how he calls it. The apples were crushed and gently pressed in the vertical press, and then the cider was fermented using indigenous yeast, naturally present on the apples, so basically macerated. And afterwards, it was re-fermented in the bottle with normal yeast using traditional method, and this one was degorged after 3 years, guys. And can you imagine when you have a product made of apples and you smell it and it's like, it's an apple cake? It immediately reminds me of my childhood. This is the complexity in the nose, the golden color, if I ever fall in love with a drink, it might be this one. It's bone dry. There's no dosage added or so. Just the nose, dry, ripe apples, super concentrated. You have some yeasty flavor, yeasty aromas, like brioche. It's an apple cake, but the ripe one, the warm one, you get served usually around Christmas. There is no cinnamon, by the way, but if you just think about cinnamon, yeah, there is some cinnamon. It's totally fine. So a really powerful nose. On the palate, this is balanced. It's round. There is some tannins, but soft tannins, well integrated, and there is acidity kicking. It's the finish is long. I tasted and tasted and tasted. This just stays, and this is such an amazing product, guys. We always talk about grapes, grape juice fermented to wine, but this is made of apples, and if you make it in a good way, in the same way, with the same approach to winemaking, this is the result. And this is fantastic. And I don't want to bother you because obviously you cannot taste it at the moment. There's only a few bottles available. I have 3 left, unfortunately. There is still some that have to be disgorged at Guillaume's place, and I will be there to do that. What I want to say is, guys, England is definitely worth a try. It's a stunning region. It's lovely people. And I mean, we just talked about the southwestern area because this is the region where I have most of my experience and most of my wines come from there. The wines I've tasted. there is other producers. I mean, we talked about Gisborne, we talked about can talk about Hambleton, of course, Night Timber, who just grew everything. Westwell is on the eastern part. There's so many great producers, guys. Just have a chat with them, have a look in the vineyard, talk to them, try some products, taste them, buy them as if it is possible. And not only wine, try the ciders, guys. England is also beer and cider country, and I would say at least 50% in restaurants or so is not beer, it's cider as well from the tap. Maybe this is not the quality you should look for, but when you have producers like him, or unfortunately I can't remember because I haven't tried them, I guess, the ciders from Lyme Bay, but there is cideries, there's wineries and there is cideries, and Guillaume is definitely one of those guys who knows what he's doing, and Tim as well. But this one actually is more affordable, and I guess there's more bottles available. So if you're in England, say hello to Guillaume, try this stuff, and take as many bottles as you can. Cheers, guys. This was the last episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks for staying with me, even though it was a quite tough episode. But if you watch this on YouTube, maybe you can see, or at least feel, my excitement for English wine, for the English wine industry. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Hit me up, podcast@pinotpixel.com. In November, there will be the next wine trip, visiting wineries, restaurants, and people from the industry, 7th to 10th of November. If you want to be part of it, just let me know. And right now, have a great week, guys. Fingers crossed for the second game for England, because the first one, they won 1-0 against Serbia. Second one is against Denmark. And maybe this is also the first indication who will make the better wines in the future, Denmark or England. Good luck, guys. Cheers.